It had been years since Daniel Reed let anyone into his heart. The soft laughter that once filled his home had faded into quiet dinners and bedtime stories told with a trembling smile. His little girl, Emily, just 7 years old, was the only light that broke through the gray skies of his life. But even that light sometimes dimmed when she asked, "Daddy, why don't you smile like the other dads?" And he never knew what to say. Tonight, though, for the first time in a long time, Daniel was trying to change that. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his only good shirt, an off-white one Emily had ironed herself, though the creases still showed. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to hope. A friend from work had set him up on a blind date, insisting that the woman, Claire, was someone he'd just click with. Daniel had laughed it off at first, but now, with a nervous heart and palms slightly sweating, he found himself pacing by the front door, waiting for the knock that would change everything. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and love finding its way back into broken hearts, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these emotional stories alive for people who still believe in hope. The knock finally came, a soft, hesitant sound that echoed louder than it should have in the stillness of the small apartment. Emily peeked from the hallway, her tiny face glowing with excitement. "Daddy, that must be her," she whispered, grinning. Daniel took a deep breath, straightened his back, and opened the door, only to freeze. Standing before him was a woman in her early 30s, holding a white cane in one hand and a shy smile on her lips. Her long auburn hair framed her face, and her eyes, though unfocused, seemed to carry a kind of quiet knowing. "Hi," she said softly, her voice trembling but warm. "You must be Daniel." Daniel's throat tightened. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to be blind. For a second, he just stood there, not knowing how to react. Then Emily ran forward, breaking the silence. "Hi, I'm Emily." The woman crouched slightly, reaching toward the sound. "And you must be the famous Emily I've heard about," she said gently. Emily giggled and took her hand, guiding her inside. Daniel watched, speechless, as this stranger, this woman who couldn't even see him, walked into his life as if she already belonged there. Dinner was simple, spaghetti and salad. Daniel had burned the garlic bread, but Claire didn't seem to mind. She laughed when Emily told stories about their pet goldfish that thought it was a shark. She smiled when Daniel awkwardly tried to make conversation about movies, then chuckled softly when he caught himself and said, "Sorry, that was dumb," but it wasn't. She told him she loved movies, the sounds, the stories, the emotions. She said she could see them in her own way. It was that word, see, that made Daniel's heart ache a little. Because for the first time in years, he realized that maybe it wasn't about seeing with your eyes. Maybe it was about seeing with your heart. And as he listened to her laugh, he felt something long buried start to stir inside him. After dinner, Emily fell asleep on the couch with her stuffed rabbit. The soft glow of the lamp painted everything in a warm light. Claire sat quietly, tracing the rim of her coffee mug, before finally whispering, "You're wondering why I didn't tell you?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, a little." She smiled faintly. "I used to think my blindness was something that defined me, but over time I realized it doesn't have to. I wanted you to meet me, not my condition." Her honesty disarmed him completely, but then she said something that made his heart stop. She whispered, "I know what loss sounds like." Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" he asked, softly. Claire took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly. "Your voice, it carries something familiar. The kind of quiet that comes after grief. The kind that never really leaves." For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak. He looked away, blinking back tears. He hadn't told her anything about his late wife, about the car accident that had left him broken, or how he spent 3 years trying to be both father and mother to Emily while feeling like he was failing at both. But somehow, this woman, this stranger, had heard what no one else could. As the night went on, they talked more deeply. Claire told him about losing her sight at 19 and a medical complication after an accident. She said it felt like watching the world fade away one light at a time until she was left in darkness. "But," she added with a smile, "I learned that sometimes losing sight helps you see things differently. You start to notice the small sounds, the little kindnesses, the warmth in someone's tone." Daniel found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone. How lonely nights felt heavier after Emily fell asleep. How sometimes he sat by the window and imagined his wife's voice calling him back from the dark. Claire listened. Really listened. Her hand occasionally brushing his as if silently telling him it was okay to feel broken. The night ended too soon. When he walked her to the door, the air outside was cool and still. She turned to him, smiling softly. "Thank you for tonight, Daniel. You have a kind soul. I can feel it." Then she leaned closer and whispered something that sent chills down his spine. She said, "Your daughter's laugh sounds just like her mother's." He froze. His breath caught. Claire couldn't possibly know that. No one could. His wife's laugh had been light and musical, something people always noticed. But how could Claire have known that? His voice cracked. How do you know that?" She paused, tilting her head slightly. "I didn't mean to scare you, it's just, when I heard Emily laugh earlier, something inside me felt familiar, like I'd heard that laugh before." Daniel stood there, heart pounding. It was impossible. Unless fate was weaving something deeper than either of them understood. The next day, he couldn't get her words out of his head. At work, his mind drifted to her smile. At home, he caught Emily humming a tune his late wife used to sing, and somehow it felt like the universe was trying to tell him something. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Claire began seeing each other more often. Sometimes they'd meet at a small cafe near her apartment. Other times she'd come over, helping Emily with her school projects or listening as Daniel read aloud from his favorite books. Slowly, life began to shift. The loneliness that had filled the walls of his home started to fade. Laughter returned, not forced but natural. He found himself smiling again, genuinely, for the first time since his wife's death. Emily adored Claire, often asking if she could stay forever. Daniel never had an answer for that. One evening, as rain pattered softly against the windows, Claire sat at the piano in Daniel's living room. She ran her fingers over the keys hesitantly, then began to play. The melody was hauntingly familiar, a lullaby Daniel's wife used to hum to Emily as a baby. He felt the blood drain from his face. "Where did you learn that?" he asked quietly. Claire stopped playing, her fingers hovering mid-air. I don't know, it just came to me." He stepped closer, trembling. "That song, my wife used to sing it. Nobody else knows it." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes. "I don't know how, Daniel, I just felt it." Something inside him broke and healed at the same time. He realized that maybe, just maybe, love had found its way back to him through the most unexpected person, someone who couldn't see the world but could feel it more deeply than anyone else. Weeks turned into months. Their bond grew stronger. But the real moment of truth came one afternoon when Daniel found Claire sitting with Emily on the porch. The two were laughing about something silly, and Claire turned toward him as he approached. "Daniel," she said softly, "you once told me you didn't know how to move on. Maybe you don't have to move on. Maybe you just have to move forward." He stood there, overwhelmed by emotion. She was right. Moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant carrying the love that had shaped him into every new beginning. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel realized something profound. His life hadn't ended the day he lost his wife. It had simply changed shape. And now, in this quiet, unexpected love, he'd found something worth living for again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every small act of support helps us bring more stories of love, hope, and second chances to life for people around the world. Before the ending, please comment below and tell us, do you believe that some souls are destined to find each other, no matter what life takes away? That night, Daniel stood by the window again, looking out at the city lights. Emily was asleep, clutching her rabbit. Claire was in the next room, humming the same lullaby that once belonged to someone he thought he could never replace. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, Daniel finally smiled, truly smiled. He realized love isn't about what the eyes can see, it's about what the heart remembers, and what it dares to feel again. And for the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel alone. Because some doors, once opened, don't just let someone in, they let the light back into your life.